Hello, today I'm having a virtual coffee with active community member Dilnaz Billimoria. Dilnaz was recently recognised by the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues with an award for excellence in services to multicultural communities in 2020. She also won the Victorian Police Excellence in Multicultural Services Award as part of the Victorian Multicultural Commission Excellence in Multicultural Services Awards for 2020. Dilnaz migrated from India to Australia with her young family 2 decades ago and calls Melbourne home. In her professional life, she works in the financial services industry. Her community and volunteering work is extensive and diverse and benefits many of the Inner East PCP's partners and communities. She's a board member of Women's Health East. She's been actively involved with the prevention of elder abuse in partnership with Eastern Community Legal Centre and is a founding and committee member of Interfaith Networks in Whitehorse, Manningham and Burundara, and a member of the Women's Interfaith Network and a member of Faith Communities Council of Victoria. And these are just some of Dilnaz's local connections and volunteering roles. She's also been recently appointed on the Eastern Health Consumer Advisory Committee. Welcome, Dilnaz, and thank you for taking time out of your busy week to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me, Sharon, and thank you to the Inner East PCP for always supporting the community and listening to the needs of the community. Much appreciated.
Oh, pleasure. So, important things first. Are you a coffee or a tea person?
I think I'm perhaps one of the very few people born in India who says yay for cappuccinos. I love my morning cappuccino, no doubt about that. But I'm glad you brought up this question, Sharon, because drinking tea or chai, as we call it, is a very ancient custom in India. It brings family and friends together, sharing a cup of steaming hot tea with the fragrance of cinnamon and cardamom and ginger and a lot of other lovely spices.
Yum.
But it's also an invitation to strangers walking down the road to join in a cup of tea. Very similar to the concept of breaking bread together, as we say, through the Bible and Western cultures. So I think, chai and a chat, nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's the way forward for communities.
Absolutely. And I absolutely do love a chai. So I need to maybe invest more time in the chat part with the chai.
Good one.
In my introduction, I mentioned just some of the volunteer roles that you have on various groups and organisations and committees. What led you to volunteering and what benefits do you get from volunteering?
I think when we came to this country 20 years ago, we were very touched and grateful for what Australia has given us in terms of, a safe place to stay, opportunities for the children, for education, work for us. And I thought it was very important, Sharon, that we give back to the community. So I started volunteering in a very small way locally with neighbors and faith communities. And it has grown over the decades to, I think, across the Eastern region and Melbourne in a greater way. And I think volunteering is one way of understanding the needs of the community, really listening to them and seeing what the community wants and needs, taking that information back to service providers like yourself, agencies, government, and being a conduit of communication and connection for the community.
Oh, and that's absolutely the role that you have. So what really excites and motivates you in your various volunteering roles?
I think what motivates me, and I have to tell you, Sharon, that I don't volunteer directly through any agency per se. I am one of those few that somebody described really well in Parliament of Victoria. I'm an independent, grassroots, bipartisan volunteer, which basically means I volunteer off my own bat. And I think the reason why that's important is it's built relationships of trust over 20 years. And that's what motivates me, that communities of different faiths and cultures and backgrounds, genders, age, they will trust me with the information that they are prepared to share. And when I take that information to agencies and governments, they will trust me to know that I speak the truth and that I'm not doing it from any personal agenda. So I think that's what motivates and excites me. And of course, to see the smile on someone's face when a project has been successful or we've received funding, that we've made a difference to people who are doing it hard. Just that smile or that little namaste or a hug really, really, truly makes my day.
I can see that. So in the times of COVID-19, what have you seen in terms of the communities that you work with, the organisations and the groups? How have they adapted in these times?
So I think it had to be a very fast evolution of the way we worked. And I'm sure Inner East Primary Care Partnership and all other agencies that we deal with were in the same, in the same kind of boat. We had to look at ways that we could reach the community that had technology. So, email, of course, Zoom, Microsoft, WebEx, Cisco, you name it, we had to kind of work with it. But we also had to be very careful, Sharon, that we didn't let communities who didn't have technology fall through the cracks. And that could be called communities, that could be senior citizens, that could be people with disabilities, people who didn't, have education to turn to. So we have knocked on thousands of doors, I kid you not, hand on heart, asking people from outside the netting, in what way could we help them. We worked with the police to knock on doors and distribute food parcels. We worked with councils. We worked with faith centers, with the churches and the gurdwaras to, give them food parcels. We worked with international students and universities to see how we could help these people who had suddenly been left high and dry. So I think between technology and the human touch, without the real touching, we did get there in the end. Yes.
Really back to basics.
Yes, yes. I remember Sharon holding a placard that I had made in different languages, and I would hold it outside the door when the police would knock, just to get them to read and say, how can we help you? And then we would get them to write on pieces of paper and show it from their window, whether it was food, prescription medicines, whether there was, some problem with the technology. I remember getting into a hazmat outfit and going into someone's house to show them that, why their email was not working, because they wanted to stay in touch with the outside world. So it has been a strange time, but I think for me, Sharon, and I hope that's what it has been for the community, it has shown me immense courage of people, courage of unsung heroes who have gone the extra mile. It's shown me the depth of compassion that people have gone to. And it's also shown me the community spirit that Australia has really been known for. And I would say, hurrah to Australians who have stepped up and shown what a wonderful country we are.
Yeah, some absolute positives from, what's been really hard times for so many people.
Yes, yes. Random acts of kindness that people have shown to those that, needed it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've already mentioned some, but what other reflections do you have on the nature of the coronavirus and isolation and the way it's affected those communities?
Yeah, it has been very tough for people of faith. And, I'm a woman of color of the ancient Zoroastrian faith. So for a lot of faith, people of faith, the faith center would have been, the focus around which it's like the sun and the planets going around. So people would visit it normally once a week, or for older people, even once a day, to the mosque for the prayers, to the synagogue, to the temple, to the church. And suddenly it was all closed and they couldn't go there. And they missed not just the prayer, but the people. The combination of connections and networks and opportunities to talk. So that, I think, has been really hard, that isolation on people living alone. For example, a lot of people who may have been widowed, widowers and widows whose families live separately. It has also shown that family violence did go up and elder abuse, sadly, because, suddenly families had to live together. because people had lost their jobs, or the older people needed help. So families came together, everyone was working from home, everyone was using every, spare square inch of space on their, desks and breakfast bars and chairs and stools. So it was really hard for people to kind of work together. But I think that's where our essence of humanity has come through, and people have managed. And neighbors, never estimate the power of neighbors. People didn't know who their neighbors were from Jack and Jill, and suddenly it was the neighbors next to you who came to the forefront to help each other. I know that a young lady in our street contacted me and said, should we set up a WhatsApp group for our neighbors? And I said, yes. So we put little pieces of paper in people's mailboxes, and we thought that maybe 5 or 10 would. And through COVID, it's now 120. Not just our street, it's all the neighborhood that has joined on. Every day we have someone saying, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm 4 streets down, number so-and-so. For example, we discuss COVID stats, information on, what's happening, whether there was a car break-in, somebody's just become a grandmother, recipes, virtual tea, as you said, drinking. Whoever's at home at 4 o'clock in the evening just joins in and, holds a cup of tea or coffee. So, and I've heard this time and again, Sharon, about the power of neighbors. So I think that's something wonderful that has come back. You use the expression back to basics. And I think neighborhood was underestimated. And in COVID, it's really just someone waving to you outside your door on a daily basis for those who live alone is such a powerful message that we care and you're not alone, even though you're in isolation.
Can really make a difference.
Yes, yes. So I always say that it's physical isolation, but social connection.
Yeah.
That's what COVID has taught me.
And the things that you've talked about, indicate to me very strongly that you are a community connector. What is the importance of community connectors?
Yeah, I have to say here that thank you to Inaris PCP for actually formally bringing this subject of community connectors to the table. It was a wonderful online conference that was held last year. Was it November, I think, or October?
I think it was actually even September.
September, sorry. And I think it was months of work by Inaris PCP and the entire committee that worked to bring together with the professor from university, Dr. Carolyn Wallace, about how important it is to understand the role of community connectors. You could be with an agency, an organization, or you could be on your own like me. But if you're able to connect communities in different ways, share that knowledge, the skills, expose people to what's happening in the community, the good and the bad, the strengths and the weaknesses. How do we utilize the strengths? How do we improve on the weaknesses? And I think it's good that it's now as a formal framework or structure. And I hope that more organizations and local councils actually come to the table for this, Sharon, especially with a lot of information now being legislated under the Local Government Act, whether it's gender equity, whether it's deliberative engagement, whether it's diversity and community voices. I think community connectors, I believe in the next couple of years, 21, 22, will have a huge role to play if this concept is adopted wholeheartedly by organizations like councils and other government agencies and community groups in Melbourne.
For sure. Yeah. So a little bit more about you personally, Dilnaz. What strategies have you found have helped you during these COVID-19 times?
Yeah. As we were joking earlier, that I think technology has been an immense help. It's almost like a third leg to stand on because we've stayed connected. But I think it's also been Zoom fatigue, as some of us, as the colloquial phrase goes. Yeah. And I think it's very important for me to remember the 3 Zs or the 3 Zs of COVID. So one, of course, was Zoom. The other was Zen. So as much as we zoom in, we need to zen out and give ourselves some time, because Zoom and other technologies could be quite intrusive. You know, we're on the computer, the boundaries of work get blurred. So it was very important for me to give myself 100% or 110. So zoom in, zen out. And I think the third Z was the zest. You cannot let yourself, you know, you have to look after yourself. And when I say look after yourself, you have to look after, you know, for yourself to be full of zest and full of beans, but also understand that there will be downtime. You know, with all the sad news going around us, we attended so many funerals on Zoom. And you need to have, so I think my message to the community is give it your all, you know, be there for everyone, but also be there for yourself. And remember that if we're well and we're good, we can help others. If we don't help ourselves, we can't really help anyone else.
That's really excellent
So
advice.
it's the 3 Z's.
The 3 Z's, I love it.
Yeah.
There must be something, though, that you secretly enjoyed about isolation or the times when we were in lockdown. Is there anything you can share?
Yes, I think we're blessed to have such beautiful nature all around us. And I think in our work lives, we had got, we've forgotten the importance of just taking a walk. I live in an area which is very green and verdant, with nature trails and, you know, little bits of the Yarra running through at different stages. The golf course that is behind my house was closed, so it became a sanctuary for ducks and waterfowl and birds, and then they started coming more and more into our backyard. Yes, so we actually started giving names. We had the big black, which was an amazing raven that would come and, you know, almost talk to us. In a lot of Aboriginal cultures, Sharon, and in our ancient cultures and faiths, we believe that the souls and spirits of our ancestors reside in nature, whether it's the birds, whether it's a beautiful old tree, you know, whether it's the flowing river. So I think was that I went back to understanding the role of nature in our lives and in our neighborhoods. Yes. And I think seeing the way everything was so green and beautiful was a great source of solace and comfort to me.
Well, that's a lovely note to finish on. Thank you, Dilnaz. Our connection seems to be fading a little bit, so I think we've been very lucky to have a reasonable connection until now, but I appreciate your time this morning, and you know, thank you so much. I think you know, some of those messages are really useful for helping all of us to get through these times.
Yeah. And I think I'd just like to end by saying thank you to you, of course, Sharon. You've been a role model in the community in explaining how you know, we can all work together and share skills, knowledge, and expertise, which you've always done. I'd also like to once again say thank you to the Inner East PCP. You've done some amazing, you know, kind of workshops, whether it's obesity, you know, and healthy living, whether it's community connections, whether it's working with local governments, women's health, East, you know, Eastern Community Legal Center. But I'd also like to have a shout out to community organizations per se, who often work on the whiff of an oily rag, or on a wing and a prayer, often with, you know, budgets being so tight, resources being so limited. The amazing work that all community organizations do in the Eastern Melbourne corridor, in the Outer East. Thank you for that. For our people like me who come to you all for help and support, we're always grateful. I'll end on my Indian thank you, which is also a greeting, which is namaste. That has been very helpful in COVID. I think better than an elbow is a polite and respectful namaste. Thank you, Sharon.
Well, maybe I could try that too.
Yeah, over your namaste, yes.